Hey, 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 this is your friendly neighborhood Frito Bandito. It's dollars to deuces. Um, Back with another episode of discussions as we always go. I got my man Abe with us tonight, as always, and stuff like that. Nate couldn't join us tonight as he is out camping, if I believe, right, Abe?
That's right. Yeah, he's out in Colorado, I believe. So he's. I just tried doing a fantasy draft with him, and he had some spotty service, but got enough to get the draft in. But yeah, he's out there out in Colorado doing some camping.
Nice, nice, nice. I can't even think of the last time I went camping. That's something I got to get back into.
I know.
What
I
about
love.
what about you? You go camping?
I love. I love it. It's been forever since I've done it, but yeah, I like it a lot.
So, how's everything going with you, sir?
Good. I was actually on the West Coast myself. Just well, I guess Nate's not all the way West Coast, but for us, he moved west for the week. But I was on the West Coast last year for a sister in law's wedding out in California. So just got back had a 25-hour travel day with a 5 year old, which was obviously a little difficult the last few days. Got back last night, so see some bags under my eyes. That's why it's been quite the trip the last about 5 or 6 days. But it's good to be back.
So I have three kids, 26, 22, and 15. I remember when we used to make our trip from Oklahoma to California, we would drive straight through.
Yeah.
And that was when they were like all around 12 and under and stuff like that. And it's like every 2 hours, are we there yet? Are we
Yeah.
there yet? Have we left the state yet? Oh,
Yeah,
those days. I'm
it's a
glad
lot
those
of
are past.
questions. Yeah, it's a lot of questions of what state are we in, what town are we in. Obviously, we flew because we're coming from Illinois, but yeah, to get to an airport was a 3.5 4 hour drive, and then obviously a 4 hour flight out to California. So and then an hour drive from San Diego to Temecula where the wedding was. So it's been quite the haul the last 5 days.
Nice, nice. So let's jump into the formalities before we get into our topics tonight. So, as always, you could follow us at Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Podbean, Twitch, When a Family Breaks on Facebook, and always on Spotify. And please hit the like button, subscribe, hit that bell, and give us that 5-star Apple review. This past week, we were doing the mock marathon on Monday, and we hit our 700 subscriber on YouTube. So great job. We as a team and stuff like that is a great accomplishment for us. So we're pushing for that 1,000. So if you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button and join this family as we. I mean, we're always doing stuff mainly about football, but we're always discussing all kinds of topics, right?
That's right. Yeah, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So we got a lot of good content on here. I mean, it's all the time. It's nonstop. So we're right in the thick of it. You know, getting closer. We're at a countdown of what I guess 8 days away from kickoff. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's a lot of good stuff here.
Yes, and as always, follow, you could go to toolesttitles.com. We got tons of videos, tons of articles. We have tons of gentlemen writing articles all the time. We got Schefter Damas giving his future studs and duds and everything on there. I mean, we got a little bit of everything. We're going to have projections on there, season long projections. And as always, just go there, give us a follow. You could hit any of our YouTube videos from our site and everything, and it links right up to our site. And as always, patreon.com. Come be part of the family. Like I said, a cup of coffee for a cost of cup of coffee and stuff. Join us. We got 5 different levels and everything. So stop by, check us out. And that pretty much covers everything for the formalities. So tonight's episode, we are going to discuss. Let's go ahead and start out with Survivor Pool, Abe. Um, how often do you do that? Do you play that much?
So I took I think last year or two off with it.
Hmm.
It's something I love to do. It's just something I did not get a part of the last year or two for whatever reason. There's nothing to explain about it, but it's something that I think is really a lot of fun. And when it builds up week by week, obviously there's always upsets in the NFL, so you think that
Yes.
you have some gimmies, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm going to save this team for later and then all of a sudden you're like, this team got beat and it shouldn't have. They're 8 point favorites, and so there's a lot of strategy to it. There's a lot of luck into it, but I think it's something that everyone should be a part of. It's a lot of fun for people that maybe if you don't have a favorite team or if your favorite team is down and out or whatever it is, it's something to kind of follow along and follow and like other teams. One thing about this is a lot of people, when you see Hard Knocks on HBO, every year people kind of become attracted to a team.
Yeah,
Obviously, this year the Detroit Lions have been a kind of a fan favorite because of that show, and I think that this is kind of a similarity to that because you can kind of like some teams that you really wouldn't quite pay attention to. So if you're sitting there on Sunday and you're like, oh, I'm not a Broncos fan, but yet you have Denver in that survivor pool, obviously you're going to pay a little bit more attention to that game.
exactly, exactly. And you know what's interesting is we have a, it's one of my leagues and stuff like that. And I think you could do it with all MFL leagues and stuff like that. They actually have a tab on there where you could do survivor pools with your counterparts within that league. And there's one league that I'm in. We do that, and the one that goes along is actually wins $125. So
Nice.
we have that's part of that's one nice thing about having in this league and everything is we have little side pools, bets and stuff like that. So I'm always into it every year. During the season of Dollars of Deuces, we always when we're giving our weekly props, that's one thing we cover every week. We pick our survivor player for that week and everything. So in speaking of which of our counterpart Nate, sup dude? See you next Wednesday. Have a shot for me. Well, this is my shot. So I didn't get me anything to drink tonight. What about
I
you?
have
You
a
drink
cocktail.
anything?
I have a cocktail, so
So let's jump into it. Let's go ahead and just discuss three picks that you like for this week, and then I'll do mine.
yeah. So let me get my phone out here because like I said, I was drafting. So um, let me see, where did I put that
So,
here?
are you drafting currently right now while we're on?
No, no, we just finished.
Well, I was
So
gonna say if it comes up, let's go ahead and discuss it.
no, we just finished. Okay, so I had three that I looked at. And they're you, one thing I kind of do is look at the spreads. I mean, Vegas always seems to be a winner. So there's a couple that I looked at that I paid attention to. Bengals at Steelers. Bengals are pretty much a touchdown favorite. Um, I guess they're home. I think they're home against the Steelers. So, I think this is one of those games where, you could have a letdown after losing the Super Bowl. We talked about this, a few weeks ago. But
Mhm.
I just think the Bengals on paper are just a way better team than Pittsburgh. Being in Illinois, I saw Mitch Trubisky quite a bit when he was with the Bears. I just think that he's got some pressure on him because I think Kenny Pickett played really well in the preseason. So I think that's one of the games that I would use for a survivor pool. Do you want to waste the Bengals right off the bat? A team that was in the Super Bowl last year. I don't know if that's what kind of are looking forward to doing. They do have a tougher schedule this year, so maybe just get a win under your belt and move forward. I mean, that's kind of the rule in this is survive and advance.
Yeah.
So that's one that I like quite a bit. Is the Bengals -6.5 against the Steelers?
So real
Uh,
quick before you move on to your next one,
sure.
I'm looking at a survivor pool, I kind of look at the season for each team and everything, and I kind of look down the road and stuff like that, and kind of see just like what you're if you want to use them anywhere down the road and everything. And I was looking at their schedule because uh, little peek underneath the tent that was one of my picks too. And that's why I just gonna go ahead and discuss it real quick before we move on because that was actually my third number pick overall and stuff like that for the week. But if I'm looking at games down the road, the only game that I see has a higher chance for the probability of them winning better than this game right here is maybe Atlanta in week. I want to say it's week 7. Um, I mean, they got Atlanta there. What's surprisingly is they have Carolina 2 weeks later, and they have a high probability of beating Carolina midway through the season, right before their bye. And to me, that could be kind of a tricky game to bet against on them and stuff like that. So even though it has a high probability and stuff like that, I don't know if I would pick that game so much mid season.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely agree. Like I said, I mean, there's a lot of strategy that goes into this. So when you're thinking like, hey, guess what? We're talking about a team that was the AFC team in the Super Bowl last year.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I just think that the Steelers are not the Steelers of old. I think they're a little bit different. I think that they have some troubling times this year, and they have some things that may be a little bit difficult in the clubhouse. With do we start Mitch? Do we start Kenny Pickett right now? I think Mitch is gonna be looking over his shoulder quite a bit, and when you have that, that makes it tough. That makes it difficult. Um, for someone to really go out and perform week one against a team that was in the Super Bowl last year. So it's hard to waste a team like the Bengals right away, a team that a lot of people have picked to have a good run again this year. But it's something they're definitely in my top three this week, for I guess next week for the Survivor pool.
Yes. All right, let's go and hop in the next one.
All right, my number two team is the Saints minus 5.5 against Atlanta. Um, I I'm not a huge Saints fan. Actually, let's be honest, I'm not a Saints fan at all. Um, I but obviously I saw them. They played pretty darn well week one last year against my Packers. So I wonder if they'll come out of the gates screaming again. The reason why I picked the Saints in this is not because they're the Saints. It's more because they're playing Atlanta, and I just think another type of situation where you have a quarterback that in Marcus Mariota that I'm not sold on. I don't know if he can go out and get it done, and especially week one when all eyes are on him. I like the Saints in this one. It helps that there's the Kamara talks have kind of died down quite a bit. So Saints just have more weapons on both sides of the ball. I think their defense is pretty good. I think it's very underrated. And the Falcons just don't have too many weapons where I think they can put up a lot of points against the Saints.
Yeah, so interesting fact about this game is it is at Atlanta, and do you I mean, when you're picking, do you look at that at all as far as
Yes.
okay,
Absolutely, yeah.
so you're not worried about it being at Atlanta.
I am, but it's a team that's in division, so it's not like they're going there for the first time in 3 or 4 years. It's a team that plays in a dome, going to a dome.
Hmm.
It's a team that's very familiar with that dome, so that's one thing that kind of pushed me over the edge and said, you know what, I'm okay with this, because typically I like when I do the Survivor pools, I like betting the home team.
Yep.
But this was a situation where I thought, you know what, I just think on paper the Saints are so much better. They're in a familiar place. It's not at their place, but I think they're in a familiar place. And you're going up against Marcus Mariota and a team that just they don't really have much of an identity on offense, either on defense. And I think that New Orleans, obviously has some weapons. So I think that I personally I just think that I think that New Orleans walks out of this game a winner and probably even covers that spread.
So the site that I look at when when I'm really diving into it, they're projecting a Saints a 73% favor to beat Atlanta. What's interesting is when they play Atlanta in week I want to say it's 15, right after their bye. It's at Saints and stuff like that, and still they're a 73% favor and stuff like that. So there ain't really no change as far as that aspect, even though that week right there, week 15, Atlanta, the Saints over Atlanta is the number one projected, the highest bet to win that week.
Yeah, I like I said, it's just a familiar place for him. So I'm a big fan of this one. I might even move this one to my number one. It's teetering between, one of my top three, obviously, but it's probably one that I'm leaning towards.
So I'm kind of see. I think we're kind of going to have the same one. So let's go ahead and jump into my number two before we jump into both of our number
Okay.
ones.
Yep.
My number two is going to be the Colts over the Houston. Um, Now it's not a bit as big of a favor as some of the other games this first week and everything, but I just like where Colts are right now, going at the start of the season and everything. Matt, I can't even pronounce it right now. It just cool ice. Let's just say that way, Matty Ice. He's new team and stuff like that. He have Jonathan Taylor there and stuff like that. Even though it's at Houston and everything and stuff like that, I just don't see how they're going to come out strong and everything. And with all the not so much turmoil, Houston's a good young team coming up and everything. I get it and everything, but I just like Colts to win this one. That's my number two team of the week. What's your thoughts on that one?
That's Al. I mean, if we just want to move right into it, that was my number three.
Okay.
So I agree with you 100%. if Nate was on here right now, he's a Texans believer this year. I can't get on board with it. Damian Pierce has looked really good in the preseason for the Texans.
Hmm.
I'm just not a Lovie Smith fan. He's never, he had some good years with Chicago, but then he went to college and he struggled very badly. Going back to the pros, he's just one guy that I, he's just not a winner. Like he has not won. He had some really good teams with the Bears, and they were very successful when he was there.
Hmm.
But since then, I mean, we're talking a decade ago. Um, his thing right now is, hey, we're going to run the ball. We're going to run the ball. We're going to run the ball. You're going to do that with a rookie running back. You're going to do that with a second-year quarterback in Davis Mills. You're going to do that with, I mean, maybe one wide receiver, two wide receivers that everyone knows. A pretty good defense. I think an improving defense, but when it comes down to it, the Colts are just good. I mean, they have a great O line. They have probably the best running back in football. They have a quarterback that's experienced. I know he's in a new system. I know he's in a new town. But they're the Colts. I think they're good. I think the Colts are going to keep it simple for Week 1 and let Matty Ice kind of do his thing and rely on Johnny Taylor quite a bit. He lit up the Texans last year in both of his games, and I don't see that being any different this year. And I think that game gets gets out of hand, and so I really like that one also. That's my 3. I can't. I don't know if I can pick that right off the bat, just because you've heard me say on here quite a bit that I'm kind of a believer in the Colts this year. They
Hmm.
have a lot of ingredients to be a very good football team that can make a run. Because I like their O line, I like their defense. They have an experienced quarterback. I think they have one of the best up and coming wide receivers in Michael Pittman. And so I think this is a really, really, really good pick. And so, and once again, you're talking about a team on the road. But you're also talking about a team that's playing in the division, so they're not going to
Yeah,
a
true.
place that they're unfamiliar with Week 1. And Houston just doesn't get rowdy and raucous. It doesn't. It's not like that's going to rattle anyone in Week 1, especially when you're talking about an experienced quarterback, a great running back, an experienced coach. So I think that that's a really solid pick as well.
All right, so let's go ahead and hop into your next one. Let's see
That
if it
is
is
my
who I think.
yeah, that is my last one. It was the Colts. So
Oh, so that was your okay. I
yeah,
got you.
that was my third one. Yep.
All right, so I want to say Saints. I like the Colts game. I like the Saints over Atlanta. Then I got two that I'm actually I'm cheating here. I'm actually picking four because I'm tied between these two and everything, and I'm still going back and forth. So I'm going to throw both of them at you, and you give them your thoughts. So first of all, how can you not pick Broncos over Seattle? How I mean, I don't care if you call it a revenge game or nothing, but there's just no way that Seattle could beat the
I
Broncos, right?
1,000,000% agree. This is a game that Russ Wilson revenge, not a revenge game, I guess, but
Yeah.
playing against his team. And I think I think if you stream most games this year and go against the Seahawks, I think you're going to make a long run in the survivor pool. So I think that that's a really good pick. When you really, as soon as you said this, I thought, well, that's a great idea because you don't want to play Denver in any of their division games because you don't know what's going to happen in those. So
Very
you
true.
need to take advantage of when they play a team like Seattle, especially in a game like this. That's honestly, that one should. I don't know how it slipped past my eye, but that one really should be quite a bit up there and be the top of the board for a lot of people.
Well,
I don't want to jinx that and say this is how it's going to be because guess what happens in the
yes.
NFL? Something might happen. It's crazy. It's a crazy league. But that's one game that I just think in a division like that, like you're talking about the AFC West, you want to pick a game out because all four of those teams can make a run, can beat anyone. But to be honest with you, you don't want to play any one of those AFC West teams in a division game just because you never know what's going to happen.
No.
So I think that this is a great spot for the Broncos to pick them right off the bat, and I think that's a dead win right there for Denver.
So oddly enough, that ain't even as far as percentage wise for the first week. That's probably the fifth ranked highest percentage and stuff like that. When I would have thought that would have been one of the highest ones, but the highest percentage as far as a for sure dunk win is Tennessee Titans over the New York Giants. They are an 81% percentage favorite over the Giants, and I like the Denver Seattle one higher than that one, even though this one has a higher percentage and everything. Because yeah, I 100% believe the Titans are going to win that game and everything. But man, I just don't know with the Giants and stuff like that. They could easily come, and if I'm yeah, it is at Titans, so yeah, I mean that makes it even better. But still, I those two are tied for my number one and everything. But if I had to pick one, it would be the Broncos over Seattle. But this game is very interesting too.
Yeah, so I would, if between the two of them, I think it's a no brainer to pick Denver between the two. I've said on this show that I think the Giants have done good things. I think they're on the up and up. Do they have problems at receiver? Yes, they do with some injuries, with some inconsistencies. Yeah, they do. Are they better than they are? Yes. Does that mean a lot? No, because they've been the Giants. They've been pretty lowly the last few years. Daniel Jones hasn't been good. But I that's one game that I kind of feel like maybe might be a trap game a little bit.
Yep.
You're talking about Tennessee was the number one seed in the AFC last year in the playoffs. You're getting Derrick Henry back, one of the best running backs in the game. I think he's very solid. Tannehill, after the preseason, he might be looking over his shoulder a little bit as well. So that tends to have a little bit of jitters. I do think Tennessee, probably wins this game. But if I were to pick between those two that you just said, I would definitely side on Denver instead of Tennessee.
All right, so I'm going to throw a curveball in this discussion for this first week. What's the number one game? And I don't know if you really look because I'm just throwing this out there. What's the number one game you're avoiding?
Oh, geez.
Curveball.
I mean, if I were to go out and to be a homer, I'm avoiding the Packers Vikings game.
Okay.
Interdivision. I in Minnesota. Green Bay has a lot of unknowns at wide receiver. Minnesota has a great aggressive offensive coach that came to their team. Minnesota's had Green Bay's number in Green Bay or in Minnesota, I should say.
Yes, it is at
So
Minnesota.
I just one of those. That's probably a game that I would completely stay away from. Not because there's a couple reasons. Number one, I don't bet on the Packers very much. But at the same time, I think I said this a couple weeks ago. I think that Minnesota wins this game. And so is it something that I would go and put in a survivor pool? Absolutely not week one. This is something that you're talking maybe week 12 or 13 if it was a different situation. And I don't have very many choices left. What would I do? I don't know. But in week one, there's so many, obviously you have 31 other options, 30 other options, I should say. But I don't know. That's one game I am completely staying away from. I think Green Bay, obviously another number one team in their division last year. But when you travel up to Minnesota, you have some unknowns at the wide receiver spot, and also me saying this is because of how Green Bay played in Week 1 last year. They just got absolutely smoked last year in Week 1. So, I don't know if that's any different. Who knows? But I just think that Vikings team is much improved. Do I think that they're going to make a run at anything? No, I don't. I don't think they're that good. You still have some question marks in a lot of places, but I think that's a game that Minnesota's kind of licking their chops for and saying, hey, if we can get out to a 1-0 lead and get ahead in this division, get a division win right off the bat, that's a big plus for them. So that's one game that I will not even come close to touching.
Now, I would say I would go with the Homer game too, but I'm not going to touch that one right now. I think the game that I would probably warn people against due to last year's, because it's the same game that started out last year, was the Tampa Bay and Dallas game. That one, that's a toss up right now. I mean, both teams are kind of going through some, injuries with on both sides as far as the line and every offensive line. Um, I would want to say, look, this is at Dallas at home. I would want to say Dallas is going to win this. I think last year was in Tampa, so I'm going to give Dallas a nod. But this is going to be one of those games that I would avoid too.
Yeah, and once again, Sunday night football. You're under the big lights. Week 1. You're not the biggest stage for the week because of Buffalo Rams. Kicking off the season on Thursday night, Sunday night, or on NBC Thursday night football. But you're obviously the big one. Everyone's with Brady being gone, obviously that's being talked about. They've had some offensive line issues. Dallas has had some offensive line issues. What does Dallas do at wide receiver?
Yeah.
Is Zeke back? And there's a lot of question marks on both of these teams. So that's a good one to stray away from. Also, we know that Tom Brady has struggled in night games for whatever reason. People say, maybe it's past his bedtime, for whatever reason. So, but he's still Tom Brady, so you just never know. I thought Dallas played surprisingly well last year in Week 1 against Tampa
Yes.
Bay when they came off their Super Bowl victory, and we didn't know how hurt Dak was last year. We didn't know what he would look like. He looked really good, in my opinion, Week 1 last year. So who knows what this is going to look like this year? I think that's going to be a heck of a game, but another game that I would definitely stay away from in a survivor pool.
Nice, nice. So in recap, I am taking Broncos over Seattle for my week 1 survivor pool. Who would you be taking?
I would like to take Broncos also, just because of kind of what we talked about. But if I had to, choose another team, I think I would probably go Saints, the New Orleans Saints against Atlanta.
Nice. All right, so let's go ahead and jump over to our next topic and everything. We're going to discuss, and I did pull these numbers from DraftKings. We're going to go over the NFC conference odds winners and the AFC conference. So I'm just going to go ahead. Let's start with NFC. I'm going to go ahead and just read down the list real quick. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. You got Atlanta at 10, that plus 10,000. Chicago Bears at plus 8,000 with the Seahawks at 8,000. You have the Carolina Panthers at plus 700. You have Detroit Giants at plus 600. Commanders at 35. Cardinals at plus 2,000. Saints are also at plus 2,000. Um, Vikings plus 1,800. Cowboys and the Eagles are at plus 100. You got 49ers at plus 750. Rams at plus 550. Green Bay at plus 400. And who would have thought Tampa Bay Buccaneers at plus 330? Is Tampa Bay, should they be at the top of the list?
It's hard to vote against Brady, but I just think that they just do not have good vibes going right now. I mean, Brady not being in camp for a couple weeks, all the injuries to the offensive line. This is one team where you're just like they can't afford anymore, and I think they had another injury this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So to see them at plus 330 clip, I you know I just I'm I don't think that that's a really good play. It is not something I would put money on. And like I said, it's hard to bet against Brady. I mean, he's a goat. He's always good. They have a ton of weapons. Whenever you go and pick up a guy like Julio, I know he's past his prime, but when he's a number three, three wide receiver, you obviously have some weapons. But that's not a team that I think is very, I just don't think that's a good play at plus 330.
So who do you like?
Obviously there's some, if you want to kind of talk a little bit of a long shot, it's hard for me to kind of to play one of these. We've gone over this quite a bit. If I were to bet one of them, I think the Rams at 5.5 to 1 is probably the best play. They're defending champs. It's hard to go back to back and get there again. I get it, but they're still loaded. They still have a good team. They still have a great coach.
Mm-hmm.
They're loaded on defense. They have good weapons on offense. I think that's probably the best play. Are you going to get a lot of return on it at 5.5 to 1? No, you're not. If you're going to go and try to get some money across the board and maybe take a little bit more of a long shot, I don't know. I don't think this division really has that with these odds. The Rams, in my opinion, is probably the best bet in this field.
All right. So before I make my pick and everything, does Rodgers with the Packers, is he the reason why they're plus 400?
Well, yeah. I mean, he anytime he's on the field, he's got a chance to win. I mean, people talk to me all the time like, hey, he doesn't have any weapons and all that stuff. I mean, I think he's 7-0 without Devontae Adams in his lifetime, throwing the ball. So, I know Devontae going to Las Vegas. I almost said Oakland. Going to Las Vegas is a huge loss, but I think that they switched their roles a little bit this year. I think that they're a team that realized like, hey, we played in some pretty crappy cold weather. We want teams to come to Green Bay, but our team last year and the last couple of years was not really set up for cold weather. And they've had some issues with running the ball, with sticking to that game plan, with their defense, obviously. And they really shored up. Obviously, we saw in the draft they drafted two first rounders on defense. On the defensive line and at linebacker. And then you get a person like Jair Alexander back. One of the top three, maybe top five corners in football. I think this team is really tough to beat. I don't know if it's all on Rodgers anymore. At 4-1, if I wasn't a Packers fan, I would say, maybe this is a pretty good bet. But we've also seen that, they can't win to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, they've been in 4 NFC Championship games in the last, 6 or 7 years, and haven't gotten there. So it's hard to bet on them at 4-1. Just those odds are not appealing to me. Not just being a Packers fan, but to people in general. I'd rather take the Rams at 5.5 to 1.
Nice, nice. So my two that I'm looking at, and they're mid pack and down at the bottom. I'm just gonna take some shots and everything. I like the Vikings at plus 1800.
Yeah.
I think they probably have one of the. I mean, even last year they had a solid team, but I just think that more cohesive this year with their new coach and everything. I really do like their chances and their odds at plus 1800. And if I'm really gonna take a long shot, why not go with Baker and the Carolina Panthers at plus 7,000?
Yes. So when we talked, I mean, obviously we've met every Wednesday night, and we've talked, and I was like, "Oh, Carolina stinks. Carolina stinks." I don't know what's flipped for me. Nate's obviously a big time Baker fan. He drafted Baker tonight in a 2 quarterback league, and I put shocking. I sent him a message like shocking, big surprise. He's like, "Was I not supposed to draft him?" I'm like, "No, I knew you would." But Baker is ticked. I mean, this guy, they lit a fire under him. Not to say that he's going to go out and light the NFL up. I don't think that's going to be the case.
No.
But he's got a competitive nature to him, and that's what you want for your quarterback. And do they have people around him? If CMC stays healthy, this team can put up points. I think their defense is way better.
Yes.
DJ Moore is good. They have good weapons. I don't think they're loaded by any means, but could they make a run? And we know in the postseason, like, you get a good defense, you get hot, you get confidence, and you make that roll into the postseason. Anything can happen. And when you have a game manager, like, I think Baker has never been a great quarterback, but I think that he can manage a team, and I think that that's what he did with the Browns when they made a playoff run. Not a playoff run, but they made the playoffs. That's what Baker did, and he, obviously he had some good running backs around him in Cleveland. But if they stay healthy, that's not a bad long pick. 3 weeks ago I said, Rich, what are you doing? Like, I just wasn't a believer in the Panthers, but when Baker comes out and he's like, hey, you guys, I'm ticked off. Like, I want to prove something. That to me kind of goes a long way for a player, especially the quarterback position.
Yeah, so I honestly believe if McCaffrey stays 100% healthy for the whole year, I just don't see how there's any chance this team doesn't make the playoffs. Look, DJ Moore is proven that he is the number one receiver there. Look, they got a solid squad with Anderson there. Now he ain't lighting it up. He didn't light up last year like what he's done in the past and everything. But they got two rookie receivers from last year that in their second year that should take a big step up. And then they also just made this trade where they got what's the receiver's name from Jacksonville? Laviska Shenault.
Let's go. Yep.
If they could utilize him maybe better than what Jacksonville did, that's a sneaky little trade that they made right there.
Yeah, he's a guy. I mean, he's a guy that I'm like, at any point in time, like, this guy's. I mean, he's got a lot of talent. I mean, he can go up and get the ball. He can be aggressive, in the open field. Maybe a different scenery is all that this guy needs. But I think that those are, like I said, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'd have laughed at you and just said, no, I'm just not a believer in the Panthers. And not that I'm a believer in them now, But I just think, I mean, when you look at that division, you just don't know right now. I mean, with all the bad vibes that Tampa Bay is taking on, and with New Orleans, just there's been some things kind of up in the air with, just kind of quietly coasting along. It's one of those teams that could sneak up on some teams and make a run. I don't, I this is if these odds were 12-1 or something, I'd be like, hey, this is don't waste your money. But if you're talking about a long shot, I'm a big fan of long shots. So this isn't a bad play to, what, to put a little bit of money down and see what happens.
There you go. All right, let's jump over AFC conference. Unless there's anybody else you wanted to discuss on the NFC side.
No, I don't think so.
So you don't like the Atlanta Falcons plus 10,000?
No, no, no. That's a team that I don't like a lot.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on. So the last topic of, like I said, NFL AFC conference. I'll do the same thing as the NFC side. Houston Texans, they're down at the bottom of the list at plus 13,000. You have the Jets at plus 7,500, Jags at plus 6,500. You got Steelers at plus 5,000. Patriots and the Raiders and the Browns are at plus 2,200. You have the Titans at 2,000. Miami Dolphin is also at 2,000. Then it jumps up to the Bengals and the Colts at plus 1,200. Ravens at plus 1,000. Broncos at plus 9. Chargers plus 750. Chiefs at plus 550. And the Buffalo Bills at plus 280. Before we even get started, the damn disrespect that they give my damn Raiders. If they got the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Broncos all up at the top four positions and stuff like that, plus 900, 750, and 550. And they got my Las Vegas Raiders at plus 2,200. Just for that, I am putting money on my Las Vegas Raiders. They will win that division and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win the conference, but yeah, I'm just leaving that there. Go ahead and tell me what you think.
Hey, you know what? I've been on the Raiders bandwagon, and Rich, I'm not. It's not because of you. It's just the more and more I think about it, this is a team that's scary. And so at 22-1, when the other three teams in this division are the top 3 out of 4 on these numbers, and the worst of them is 9-1 at Broncos. If you're going to place some money, I mean, when you do these bets, I mean, if you're you kind of want to take a shot unless there's a no-brainer that you feel is going to hit. So once again, I'm kind of a long shot fan. If I were to take a long shot fan, it would definitely be the Raiders at 22-1. I just think that they have the weapons. They have a coach that's not done it as a head coach, but gosh, he's been awfully successful and knows how to win in a coaching room. And I think that's awfully important when you get down to it. You have Derek Carr, who's been he's been good. I think last year they had a lot of games where they won, late and coming back. I think that you have 2 really good DNs that are solid. I mean, just can put pressure on a quarterback. And when you get in the playoffs and you can put pressure on a quarterback, anything can happen. The one thing that that I personally, and I know you're not a big fan of this. The one thing that kind of worries me is I'm not a Jacobs fan. He's someone that I'm not a believer in. I think he's a good running back. I just don't think that you can, when you get in the playoffs, that you can put a team away with it. I don't think he's a closer. But I think you have enough weapons on offense in a short passing game, such as Waller and Renfro, and obviously Devontae, where you don't quite need a closer to put them away, especially if you're playing at home or you're playing, in a nicer environment or in a dome. You don't need a ground and pound guy. So if you're going to place a long shot bet, I am 100% on board with the Raiders at 22-1.
Who else you liking?
What's that?
Who else you liking?
The other team I like is probably the Colts at 12-1. I mean, obviously the Bills and Chargers are fun picks and easy on the eyes. But I mentioned this earlier. I think the Colts have a lot of ingredients to make a playoff run, as long as they stay healthy, as Johnny Taylor stays healthy. I think we're going to see a little bit less of Jonathan Taylor. He may not get as many touches. Keep him a little bit more fresh towards the end of the season. I think Nyheim Hines is gonna play a bigger role than what he's done in the past. That offensive line can ground and pound and just put and just wear a team out, wear a defense out. And then on the other side, their front seven is very good. So I think they're in a weaker division, so they may not have to um, just go through the battles of of a team like the AFC West would,
Mhm.
where every game almost seems like a playoff game. So I think that that kind of helps a team like the Colts. Not to say that they have a walkthrough, because no game in the NFL is ever a walkthrough, but their division is just a little bit weaker than not a little bit. It's much weaker than the AFC West. I don't know if there's ever been a division as good as the AFC West is going to be this year, but so I think that at 12-1, I think those are pretty good odds for a team that has a lot of ingredients to make a run in the postseason.
Yeah, so as far as the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Raiders, if I'm giving any advice to anybody, I'm telling everybody to stay away from these numbers because they are going to beat each other up.
Yeah,
You've got a better chance. It's kind of like saying the field against the AFC West and stuff like that. You want to go against the field as far as winning this conference and everything because, like I said, look, not only do they have to play each other and stuff like that, but they also have to play in the NFC division against the Seahawks, the Cardinals, and the Rams and stuff like that. And that's just another
Tigers.
division
Yeah,
that's brutal with them and stuff like that.
yeah,
So they are going to beat each other up and stuff like that. Obviously, like I said, Bills is probably who I'm looking at as playing against the field, if you want to say. But if I did have to take someone down towards the bottom besides my Raiders, I do like the Dolphins and stuff like that at plus 2,000. They could sneakily sneak up there and make some noise.
yeah. I mean, to just kind of piggyback off what you said, the Bills have the best all around team in football, in my opinion.
Hmm.
They're but at 280, if I were to put $100 down to win $280 for them to make the Super Bowl, I don't know if that's really a good play to make. I mean, and the Dolphins, why you mentioned them, this is a team I'm intrigued about. I mean, it's not a team that a lot of people are talking about. Obviously, there's some hype because they went out and got 37 running backs on their squad, and they got Tyreek Hill, and there's a lot of question marks with Tua, and they got a new coach, and there's a lot of moving parts with the Dolphins, but they have an awful lot of talent, and I think that this team is going to be fun to watch. I don't this team could go 11-6. They could be 6-11. I don't know what they could do, but if they get on a run, I think that I think that Tua's. If Nate was on here, he'd probably shut me off, but I think Tua is a little bit better than what a lot of people think. I don't. He can he can he he doesn't have the big arm. He doesn't have. Um, he's not the sexy name that a Justin Herbert or a Patrick Mahomes, any of that stuff. But can he manage a game? I mean, the guy's won games. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, he's not had a ton of talent on offense besides Jalen Waddle last year. He's won some games. I mean, they had a really good defense a couple years ago. They were ball hawks all over the field. Last year, that was not the case. But they've been 9-8, 8-8, 9-8, something like that. They've been right around 500 the last 2 years with Tua.
Hmm.
But for what he's had around him, and now all of a sudden you put some pieces around him, a guy like Tyreek that can take anything to the house. You have a lot of speed in Raheem Mostert. You have a good running back in Chase Edmonds. You have obviously Jalen Waddle, one of the up and coming wide receivers in the league. You have a solid or a solid tight end in Gesicki that no one's. A lot of people are saying he might get traded.
Sleeping on
So
them.
yeah, so a lot of people, they have a lot of weapons, and they have pretty much the same defense they had 2 years ago, that are healthy and that are 2 years more experienced. So this is definitely a team that I will definitely be keeping an eye on. Can they win their division? No, because they're with Buffalo. Can they make the playoffs? Absolutely.
Yes. Now it's funny you say that. I'm listening the whole time while you're talking about Tua, and I could have swore if you didn't start out with Tua and you didn't start out with Miami Dolphins like I did, I would almost thought you were talking about Mr. Derek Carr because it's almost kind of similar story and stuff like that. Is great QB and stuff like that, but just doesn't get the respect and stuff like that because of the surroundings of him. Now, just like this year with the Raiders, he has that offense kind of built around him and everything. And it's time to show up and everything. So just like what they're saying about Carr, it's to his time to shine too and stuff. And if they're kind of similar travel paths, if you really want to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, you were talking about two quarterbacks that are, hey, show. I mean, this league is show me what you can do, and it is. and if you don't do well, guess what? There's someone behind you that's going to give their best shot to be really good also and make a name. So both of these quarterbacks have done it. I mean, Carr's done it. He's been pretty good. He was in my opinion he was really good last year in the clutch. Tua has not done it, but he's got a lot more. He's got a lot of pieces around him. Obviously Carr has a ton of pieces around him also. So
Hmm.
it'll be interesting to see how both these guys really go out and do it. The one advantage for Tua obviously is that he's not playing in the AFC West, which we just keep referring back to.
Exactly, exactly. So, with that being said, so any thoughts on any other team in the AFC?
I don't think so. I mean, there you the Chargers is a fun play at 7.5 to 1, but I just don't want to. I just don't want to really get involved in that division too much. If I'm gonna get involved in it, it's gonna be the Raiders at 22 to 1. Besides that, I am not sold on the Titans at 20 to 1. Bengals at 12 to 1 is obviously very intriguing.
Hmm.
Them getting the Super Bowl last year. Um, that's an intriguing play. An absolutely loaded team that when you're talking about a quarterback that that had some had a terrible offensive line last year, and that's 100% what they worked on this year.
Yep.
They actually improved their defense a little bit as well. So I think that's a good play. But they have a tough schedule. We talked about them a few weeks ago when we went through AFC schedules, and they have a very tough schedule to start. We'll see how Burrow does with his. I think he had appendicitis or something. Is that right? He had something where
Yes. Yes.
it's
True.
sidelined him for the
Yep.
last couple weeks. So we'll see how that does. I mean, I know he's lost a lot of weight from it. But if he gets time, this is an absolutely loaded team, and you're talking about a very confident quarterback, a confident team, a team that that for a lot of years were just they just couldn't do it. They couldn't move to that next level, and we saw last year that every week in the playoffs we're like, we're the Bengals. I mean,
Yeah.
they're gonna fall at some point, and when you have a leader like Burrow that just thinks he's better than everyone, that goes a long way in the NFL. And when you have that confidence, 12 to 1 odds for them is pretty intriguing.
So let me ask you a question because this is the one team that at plus 1,000, the Baltimore Ravens. Is that a tricky bet right there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm a big believer in Lamar this year. He still hasn't got paid. It sounds like that's coming very soon. We're once again dealing with running back issues. You go and sign Kenyon Drake. I mean, he's your guy right now because I think Dobbins he probably won't play week 1. Who knows if he's going to go on the 4 week pup list? I don't know. This is a team that has to rely on a wide receiver that has done nothing so far in Rashad Bateman. As I say that, I drafted him tonight, and I don't know what round, pretty early. So
I like them. I like them.
yeah, they got to throw the ball somewhere besides Mark Andrews. So I just don't know. If I were sitting there at the ticket window and I see Ravens at 10 to 1 or Colts at 12 to 1, and I had X amount of dollars on me, I'm gonna put that money on the Colts
Yeah.
instead of the Ravens.
Yeah. I keep on looking at that one and I'm like, man, plus 1,000. I just don't know on that one.
Mm-hmm. But
To
they're
me,
gonna
that
have
is a tricky play.
yeah. And you never know
So,
with Lamar. I mean, Lamar could have another MVP season, and it could be tough to stop. So you never
y-
know.
you know what's interesting about that is we say that and everything, and they drafted the rookie tight. They drafted a couple tight end rookies this year, but the Isaiah Likely that everybody's talking about and stuff like that. Wouldn't it be nice to see those two kind of like the Patriots days with Andrews uh, uh, and Gronk?
Yeah. So Hernandez and Gronk or whatever.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that you're going to see a lot of 12 sets with the Ravens. I mean, you're going to see one running back and two tight end sets. It's one of those things where they almost have to. I mean, they just don't have the weapons on the outside to do it. And when you have one of the best tight ends in the league in Mark Andrews, and you have a 12 tight end set or 12 offense
Yeah.
set where you have Lamar who can break the pocket and run for 50, 60, whatever it can happen. I think you're going to see a lot of that. So I think you're going to see a lot of that with Baltimore this year because they just don't have the weapons on the outside.
Nice. So that ends our talk on the AFC conference. Um, once again, we're man, we had a pretty good episode. It went a little bit longer than I expected and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Great talk,
yeah,
Abe. I
yeah,
appreciate it very much, man.
yeah, absolutely.
So once again, before we finish up, I'm just gonna touch up real quick. As always, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell, give us a 5-star Apple review. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Podbean, Twitch, When a Family Breaks on Facebook and Spotify. Abe, you got anything to say before we cut it out tonight?
I don't think so. Hey, we're 8 days away. I can't wait till next week when we're just, it's basically Christmas Eve next week. So, next time we meet. So it's an exciting week. I have quite a few things going on this weekend and Labor Day with fantasy football drafts that I'm
Oh yeah.
excited for. Gosh, we're getting so close. It's right there.
God, I am so, me and my son, we're just that's all we talk about right now and everything. He had his first game this past week, this past weekend. I had the day off and I was ready for it and everything, and the clouds started building up and everything. I go, oh man, it's gonna be a game in the rain and everything.
Oh no.
Next thing I know, I get a message from them, they canceled the game. First game,
Oh no.
and I was like, it just broke my heart because it was NFL coming, high school football, Friday night lights, man.
Yeah.
It's just one of the things you love to see and everything. So
Yeah. There's
I'm
nothing.
excited, man.
Yeah. There's nothing better than the fall and Friday Night Lights and Saturday football and Sunday NFL. I mean, there is nothing better than this time of the year, in my opinion.
Well, once again, appreciate you, sir. Next week we'll actually be going over our first week episodes as far as our game player prop bets. Nate will be back. The full team will be here. I'm assuming you'll be with us for the season,
Yep.
correct, Dave?
Yep. Yep. I'll be here.
Nice, nice. All right. So for everybody that joined us, appreciate the support. Make sure you guys go subscribe, and y'all have a great weekend. And we will see you next week.